Hi there, it's Rose Marcus. Thank you for joining me today. Mars in Aries, let me give you the scoop. Forging a new reality. That's exactly what we're doing right here and right now. The transit of Mars in Aries started on June 28, 2020 and extends to January 6, 2021. Typically, Mars is about a 5 to 6 week transit through a sign, but because of the upcoming retrograde, which is September 9 to November 13, Mars is going to spend 6 months in Aries. That is a long time to be doing battle with the existing reality. See it as an opportunity. You have 6 months to get something new off the ground. You have 6 months to get fired up on the new you, okay, on a new personal agenda. So Mars, this is August, and Mars is at its brightest visibility pre-dawn through the month of August, gaining in brightness throughout the month. So it is setting up for the retrograde period and for the post-retrograde period, which is going to extend through the USA election in the fall. The current Mars-Sun synod cycle started September 2nd, 2019 and extends to October 8 of 2021. Now, a synod is when two planets in their orbit meet up by what we call a conjunction. And so this cycle that started on September of last year started in the sign of Virgo. That is very important to note. Virgo is the healing crises archetype. And what was conceived, or the inception point of this cycle, of course, coronavirus was teeming with life in the fall, but we didn't know until it hit with a vengeance at the peak Mars activation cycle in February, March of 2020. So when there is a new seeding here, oftentimes we don't know exactly what that's about until it gets a little bit further down the road and perhaps smacks us in the face, right? Which is what COVID-19 did. So we have two peak Mars activation cycles for 2020, February, March 2020, and July 2020 through January of 2021. Now, February, March was when Mars was traveling through the sign of Capricorn. So Mars in Capricorn made it real. Mars in Capricorn was forming conjunctions with the heavyweights in Capricorn this year, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. Ceres was in Capricorn at the start of the year as well, too. It has since moved on. It is now in the sign of Pisces, spending most of the year in Pisces, which is an exposure archetype and a mass consciousness archetype. Ceres has been replaced by Pallas Athena, that's traveling with the Capricorn gang and staying very close to the transit of Saturn for the duration of the year. All right, and so we have two synod cycles that are overlapping the Sun-Mars cycle. Now, Sun is the creative principle, so this is the heart and center of being. The sun shines the light, sends energy to what it is that is important for us, significant for us, turns the light up on that. And Mars is the action assertion principle. So Sun Mars, creative self-actualization. It is going to target the heart and center of the experiential track so that we can become more conscious of what it is that we are creating. And the Mars retrograde is about recalibration, taking a look at what it is that we are creating and deciding whether we want to create more of it or whether we want to move ourselves in an altogether new direction. So this is the synod of Mars and the Sun. Virgo archetype is crises as a vehicle for growth, and nothing gets you up and out of your chair faster than being pushed to the limits. Now, Mars-Pluto is a primary planetary pair. specific to the field of evolutionary astrology, Pluto corresponds to the soul's desire for its own evolutions, the psychology of the soul, the motivational factor of the soul, the desires of the soul. This is bigger picture stuff. Pluto has been transiting the sign of Capricorn since 2008 and continues to 2023, 2024. Pluto swings its wrecking ball on any structure, system, crystallized consciousness, and so on, any reality base that has outworn its usefulness, and it's certainly been doing that since 2008. Mars is the agent of the soul. Mars is the cutting edge of soul desires. It's their contemporary, it's the here and now, the present time. Mars is the subjective will of the soul. This is the personal journey here. This is the ego self and the soul in combination, creating evolution. Pluto, big picture, says, I desire, and Mars says, yep, boss, I'll experience that for us. Mars embodies soul desires. Mars is the experiential thread. So you have Mars and Pluto together starting the journey in Capricorn, and this is a timetable, a time frame that is significant and important and a priority to the collective soul and to your personal life journey as well too. So know that both of those are activated at the same time. Now, for 2020, that Mars in Aries retrograde cycle, September 9 to November 13, Mars makes it almost all the way out of Aries, goes to 28 degrees of Aries before it turns retrograde, and it backs down to 15 degrees. If you have any planets in your natal chart that are between 15 and 29 of the cardinal signs being Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, then you're going to be at some kind of turning point in your own process, in whatever it is that you are confronting, however you are experiencing yourself, whatever it is that is firing up for you. Mars in Aries, Aries is instinct. Mars is a beginner. It pioneers, it initiates, it starts, it begins. So when Mars is in Aries, the soul is firing up some new desires. It desires to have some kind of new experience. And how it does that is through firing up some new instincts, new impulses, and these are emanating from the soul itself. Mars in Aries is a good time to initiate. It's a good time to begin, to start new things, absolutely. When Mars turns retrograde, this is pulling back. It is giving us a greater degree of separation from that which we've been creating. A retrograde cycle is meant as a consciousness raising cycle. Mars in Aries and retrograde can put the brakes on. It can snuff out passion, it can drain energy, but what it essentially is doing is stoking the fire. It is an intensification chapter, the intention which is to pull back in order to stoke the fire, to heat things up. And the intention is, after the retrograde period is over with, to accelerate the action, to get us moving faster along the timelines. So it is a pullback of significance, despite the fact that you might feel that you are on hold, or that you can't rev it up, or that you can't push forward on things. That's exactly what it is meant to do. It's a check-in with self. This is when the soul is pulling the ego back, so that ego and soul can get back on the same page if they have been off track with one another. So know that cycle. Now, Mars is a personal planet, and Mars retrograde is primarily important for our personal life journey. But of course, I had to look back to see what was happening during the previous Mars in retrograde, Mars in Aries retrograde cycles. Now, first of all, Mars takes 2 years to go through the entire zodiac. and we'll do that in a 2-year period. In the time that Pluto is in Capricorn, Mars will take 8 rounds around the wheel, coming back to meeting up with Pluto 8 times in this cycle. And so that's kind of sub-chapters of the developmental track of breaking down the reality and reformulating the baselines. All right. And the past 2016, 2018, and 2020 are particularly potent cycles for a few different reasons. The one in 2016, there was no retrograde of Mars retrograde during that time. The 2018 was the only time in the batch of the 8 subcycles when Pluto was retrograde for the inception of the Mars-Pluto synod. And of course, the one that we are experiencing right now is particularly potent because Mars transit is hooking up by dynamic tension, being triggered by all of the Capricorn planets that we have this year. That this is a history in the making year, and it has been right from the get-go and will continue on. So looking back to see what was going on during the previous cycles here, Mars takes a retrograde every 2 years, but it is rare for Mars to take a retrograde in Mars. So this is a punched up soul priority cycle for sure. Now, in 1909, the cycle was August 23rd to October 24. The cycle started at 7 degrees Aries and backed into 25 degrees Pisces. In 1941, like the cycle now, the entirety of the retrograde took place in Aries, 23 degrees, back down to 11, September 6 to November 10. And in 1988, that was starting in Aries, 11 degrees, moving back to 29 degrees Pisces, August 26 to October 28. So here's some interesting tidbits on what was taking place in the world at that time. So in 1909, the suffragette movement was gaining good traction. It had, of course, it wasn't started then, but it was really gaining quite good momentum. And interestingly, too, I must say that a retrograde cycle is that planet's relationship to the sun. So it's a creative process, creative track, an intensified creative track. And when an outer planet aligns with the sun, it will do so during the retrograde by opposition. So for this 1909 date, the opposition, the superior opposition of Mars and the sun took place on September 24th of 1909. And it took place at 0 degrees. Mars was at 0 Aries and the sun was at 0 Libra. And that is triggering the cardinal world axis. Anytime the cardinal world axis is triggered, it stimulates world events. So that was a very, very important time. And in 2009, some of the things that took place here, there was the Bosnian crises. There were a number of things that were triggering that set up the game board for the launch of World War I in 2014. On September 16, right in the middle of this retrograde, Adolf Hitler, who was 20 years old at the time, had been in Vienna for a little more than a year. His savings were exhausted. He had no income, and for several months he found himself homeless. And it was written that that was an experience that would intensify his drive, his resolve. That's exactly what Mars does when it's in retrograde. It intensifies the drive, it intensifies the resolve, and of course it set Adolf Hitler on the course that, of course, we know today as a piece of our collective history. Also in 1909, the Hudson Motor Car Company was founded. And also in 1909, a small group of activists organized and founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, which is a huge organization today. In 2020, that organization has been triggered by the events that we have been experiencing quite recently. The George Floyd trigger launching the Black Lives Matter movement, and the attention brought to systemic racism, skin color. That's a Capricorn archetype, and we have all these planets in Capricorn. And it is high time that we brought systemic racism to an end. And that's exactly another piece that Pluto and Capricorn is working on, the ending of such kind of conditioned consciousness in terms of how we are living together on this planet. So that was 1909, and in 1941 was Pearl Harbor, and at that time World War I was going strong. It was at the end of 1941 that the USA officially joined the war. In 1988, in these dates here, we don't have the dynamic aspects. Mars isn't making dynamic aspects like it is during the contemporary cycle. But there were a few things that happened that I thought were of note. It was the invention of the cell phone, and digital cell phones were invented. Prozac was invented, and Mars in Aries retrograde is about dampening, right? You know, the libido, the drive, you know, and so forth, dampening down. That's what Prozac does. And also, too, that Mars retrograde cycle, the invention of the abortion pill. So that's just to demonstrate a little bit of how potent these Mars retrograde cycles are. Now, remember that somewhere in the middle of the retrograde cycle is going to be the peak, the midpoint peak, and that's an inception time. It is a seeding time for what comes next. And what is being seeded, or what is being brought to life, doesn't have its visibility till sometimes later. In 1988, I know what was happening in my personal life, and that was revealed to me 9 months later, something that set some destiny for me in my own personal life. If you're born in 1941 or 1988, during the dates that you see on the screen, you were born with Mars retrograde. So Mars retrograde is furthering the process of your individuation. You are meant to have a greater degree of separation from herd mentality. You are meant to come back to center for yourself, and to reestablish yourself in some kind of new way. So Mars retrograde is always good for an entrepreneur or someone who is advancing their own individuation process. All right. Let me go to the next screen here. In 2018, or sorry, 2020, I meant to say, we have many triggers for this retrograde period. So Mars is fired up in the sign of Aries, and forming conjunctions to the planets in Aries. Chiron and Eris are currently traveling through the sign of Aries. Mars and Chiron together, this is something unresolved from the past, dialing up a piece of unfinished business. So Chiron will always do that, has a sense of fatedness or destiny to whatever is being created for you. And you may feel that as you move forward through this Mars cycle. So that unresolved or unfinished business can be something to review and reassess, and to see if you can process in some kind of new way. It is also, it sets the fatedness of circumstances into play. Now, Chiron too is an archetype of scapegoating and victimization. And of course, there are marginalized societies that feel that they're the scapegoat to the collective. And certainly many of us feel victimized by governments and the way the institutions are running, or the way the system is running. So we see how that is being triggered right now. Pallas Athena is a political archetype here. She's the warrior goddess. And she's the goddess that fights for justice. So we certainly see that the fight for justice is animated by the Mars transit this year. Pallas Athena is about the social, political, and personal politics that you may be confronting at this point in time. So Mars is picking up the pace on all of the various components. And there are a lot of dates on this screen. There's a lot of triggers. This is step by step. It's an uncovering process. It's picking up the missing keys. It's filling in more of the puzzle each step of the way. It's experiential. Mars is experiential. We have to get through these checkpoints in order to download another piece of the program so that we can piece it together for ourselves. So this is an uncovering time, and Mars is certainly picking up the pace on the political front and on the fights for justice. It is imperative that we figure out how to piece it together in some kind of new way. Mars, Jupiter is putting everything on the increase. It's escalating the necessity to confront existing reality, all those Capricorn archetypes here. This is, again, the drive to get further, to access more, to discover more, to take it further, to gather more knowledge, to, Mars, Jupiter is accelerating the journey towards the future. Jupiter is future oriented. It's about huge movements. Huge protests will continue. It is a time for risk-taking, and certainly many people put their lives on the line, and absolutely it is a time when we all must represent for self. What you do for yourself, you do for me, and you do for us. Mars, Jupiter is enterprising, and it opens up opportunity. It's opportunity for you and me. It's also opportunity for the opportunistic. So there are advantages, and certainly there are advantages worth grabbing in this period of time. And so we have everything under the sun that is being fired up right now. Now, of course, Mars and Saturn, that can be a frustration aspect here. This is, doing battle with the system that's in place, doing battle with the government, doing battle with external authority. Mars and Saturn is about breaking down the wall. It's about breaking down the resistance that you may have, against choosing it in a different way. Again, Mars and Saturn is breaking down the rationale behind why you would be continuing to flog a dead horse when it is not serving you or creating the thriving life that you would like to see for yourself, right? So this is a building momentum. Of course, Mars and Saturn is putting enormous pressure on the system, and is putting enormous pressure on each one of us to see it in a new way, to relate to it in a new way, to access it in a new way, to animate ourselves, to pick up the sword and do battle with whatever it is we need to confront in some kind of new way. One of the things that we're doing battle with right now is depression. Depression is a Capricorn archetype, and it is running rampant on this planet. And it is something that is a far too common a state nowadays. So Mars and Saturn, it's an endurance test. We're under great strain. We are all frustrated. Mars and Saturn is bringing us to breaking points. It is tests of strength, tests. It's endurance tests for sure. So this is a time frame when we are perhaps forced to do battle with the reality. As I said in a lecture I did earlier this year, there's nothing there's no way to avoid or escape the tough go. So it is a time to roll up your sleeves and to plan on sweating it out until you to do the heavy lifting until we get ourselves there. Mars and Pluto, that's a compelling force. It is an intense drive to accomplish, attain, and achieve. And Mars Pluto will push and force the envelope. It won't let up until something of significance is accomplished. So we have enough. If you're not picking up the energy of one of these transits, you'll certainly pick up one of the other of the transits. So one after another, these transits are going to force the envelope on creating whatever it needs to create in order to get us bridged over to the other side. Now, October 14 of 2020, this is the midpoint, the Mars-Sun superior opposition, when Mars retrograde will oppose the Sun in Libra. And from now until October 14, we're in the corrective portion of the cycle. This is when we are uncovering the work that needs to be done. Mars is targeting whatever it is that is flawed, whatever it is that needs to be looked at, whatever it is that needs to be fixed, improved, healed, and so forth, right? So it's bringing us information, and it is a time frame for us to be analyzing exactly what it is that we're facing, and to discriminate here in terms of what is useful, what is purposeful for us to continue to groom and to continue to stoke, and what is it now that to choose your battles, basically, right? Here I have on the screen keywords for Mars. Mars in Aries: fire, yang, masculine, action, assertion. It is about putting drive into action, putting passion into action. Action is all about the instincts. Now, it's physical energy, and it's all about tackling it head on and confronting whatever it is that we need to. Mars in Aries, it's very impatient. It's very now. I always say, as an Aries, the hardest thing I've had to learn is to count to 10. Because when something is firing up, and anger itself, anger is an initiative. Anger is one way that Mars fires itself up. And anger can sometimes be useful to us if it gets you up and out of your chair. Mars aligned with Eris and Aries. Aries is the angry goddess. It won't let you forget about yourself. And sometimes that's a good thing. So I look at Aries as being a positive catalyst to not let you give up on yourself. Now, when Mars is retrograde here, it is an intensified subjective review. Retrograde means to revisit, relive, and during the time of Mars retrograde, it is a check-in with yourself. Mars direct says, I desire. Mars retrograde says, wait a minute, do I still desire? It is a separation impulse. It will pull you back. It will separate you from the normal course. This is to give a wider divide between what is how you have been acting, and now to allow you to observe yourself in action. Mars retrograde can often be a time of separation in relationship. And so, if you're perpetuating more of the same and your heart and soul is not into it, if there's no steam to take it further, this Mars retrograde will be the demise of anything that is not meant to be taken forward. So this is instincts on review. Mars in Aries is about the soul creating new desires and needs. The soul, when Mars is in Aries, the soul desires to experience something new. It's triggering some new instincts. When Mars is retrograde, the soul is on a gut check. It is now reviewing that which it has fired up for itself, that which is in desire. This is shifting the orientation from that impulsive or knee-jerk reaction to more considered and measured responses. It is to curb the excessive or blind willfulness, egocentricity, or reactionary impulses of the ego self, the wild ego in motion here, the ego on the run. It is a taming or a tempering of that ego on the run. And to shift from egocentric to soul-centric, to put ego and soul back on the same page. So to respond rather than to react. You may feel this Mars retrograde as dousing the fire, as running out of steam, as feeling an energy depletion, as feeling restrained or constricted here. It's traveling with the brakes on. Mars is built for speed. Capricorn is a slow down. Then you put the two of those together and you have traveling with the brakes on. But in reality, this is a heating up timetable. It's stoking the fire. It's throwing more logs on the fire. This is checking in with yourself during the retrograde cycle. As you check in with yourself, do you still want what you have been reaching for? This Mars retrograde will give you the chance to decide whether yay or nay. If you keep coming back to it, and saying, no, that's what I want, that's what I want, then by the time the Mars retrograde cycle is over, you've built a strong enough fire to give it a good launch pad, to springboard yourself, to bring enough dynamism to get the action going, enough frictional influence here to start something of significance, and hopefully to carry it through a longer process, or carry it the distance. So this is an important cycle for heating up. I wanted to read you a little quote that I had here. Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so we can fear less. Madame Curie said that. And here's one more quote to end with. The truth is that our finest moments are likely to occur when we are feeling deeply uncomfortable, unhappy, or unfulfilled. For it is only in such moments, propelled by our discomfort, that we are likely to step out of our ruts and to start searching for different ways or truer answers. M. Scott Peck. Thank you for joining me today.